All right, welcome back. In our last explainer, we started talking about this big idea of the fire of God. Today, we're going to get even more specific and tackle one of the most, let's say, misunderstood parts of that, the baptism of fire. So when you hear baptism of fire, what comes to mind? For a lot of people, it's all about, judgment, destruction, really scary stuff. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's actually about transformation, not destruction? Let's get into it. Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, we actually need to travel back in time. We're talking about 1800 years ago to an early church leader who had this completely different take on what this fire was all about. This is a quote from Clement of Alexandria. And what he's saying is, look, we're not talking about a regular destructive fire here. He calls it the wise fire. Think about that. A fire that's smart, that can tell the difference between what's valuable and what's not. And that's the key, right there. This wise fire isn't about just burning everything to the ground. Its whole purpose is to purify the soul, to transform it. It's a kind of discipline, sure, but one that's meant to lead to a really positive change, a total conversion of the heart. Now, Clement didn't just pull this idea out of thin air. It's actually woven all through the biblical texts, using these really powerful metaphors that paint a picture of God as like a master artist or craftsman. Yeah, check this out. The prophet Malachi gives us this amazing image of God as a refiner of silver and gold. He's sitting there, carefully applying heat, not to destroy the precious metal, but to make it more pure, more valuable. I mean, think about how that actually works. A goldsmith heats up the metal, and all the junk, the worthless stuff they call dross, it floats to the top. Then you can just skim it right off. The idea here is that the spiritual fire does the exact same thing to us, bringing our inner flaws to the surface so they can be removed. Okay, so fast forward a few hundred years, and John the Baptist picks up a similar idea, but he uses a metaphor from farming to talk about what Jesus would do. So winnowing is when you toss grain up in the air. The heavy, good stuff, the wheat, falls straight down, but the light, useless chaff just gets blown away by the wind. And what's so cool is that in both of these pictures, the refiner's fire and the winnowing fork, the goal is the same. Save the good stuff. The gold is kept, the wheat is gathered. It's only the worthless junk that gets tossed. All right, so we've got these powerful metaphors. But how does this play out in, real life? Let's look at how this idea goes from a metaphor to something really tangible, and there's no better story to start with than Moses. So Moses spends 40 years in the wilderness. 40 years! And from this perspective, that wasn't a punishment. It was a training ground. It was like a giant crucible that burned away all his pride and ego, shaping him into the humble leader he had to become. And that moment at the burning bush, it's the perfect symbol for the end goal. It's about being able to hold that intense, fiery divine presence without being completely consumed by it, to become a vessel for it, not its victim. And this wasn't just a one-on-one thing. The same idea of being refined through a tough situation was applied to the whole nation of Israel. I mean, can you imagine? You're trapped. Pharaoh's army is behind you, and the Red Sea is in front of you. Talk about pressure. But here's the twist. The purpose of that insane situation wasn't to make them afraid. It was to bring the fear that was already hiding inside them out into the open. Once it was on the surface, it could be dealt with. It could be healed by this huge demonstration of divine power. Okay, this gets us to the absolute heart of the matter. This is the most important distinction we have to make when we talk about the baptism of fire. It all comes down to motivation. You see it right here in this quote from Hebrews. The tough stuff, the discipline, it's framed not as God being angry, but as a loving father training a child. The goal isn't to hurt, it's to teach, to correct, to make you stronger. So, to bring this ancient idea into our world, the source gives this great modern analogy. It's a story about a truck, some tomatoes, and some zinc. I know, sounds weird, but stick with me. Okay, so they call this the tomato principle. The idea is that God might use irritating people or situations, those are the acidic tomatoes, to expose the hidden bitterness or volatility inside us. That's the zinc. When they come together, you get a reaction that brings all that inner gunk to the surface. So those annoying people in your life, maybe, just maybe, they're actually tools for your own purification. And that brings us to this side-by-side comparison. Look at the difference. Divine refining is all about purifying and healing. The goal is restoration.
Human punishment, on the other hand, is often just about penalizing. Its outcome can be damage and stigma. Two totally different goals. And this isn't just a difference in attitude, It really comes from two fundamentally different ideas about what justice is even for. In the divine law we're looking at here, the focus is on restitution. It's about making things right for the person who was wronged. And in that process, the offender is trained, and once the debt is paid, forgiveness and full restoration are actually required. That's a world away from a system that just slaps a label on you like ex-con for the rest of your life.
And this verse from Romans kind of brings it all home. It suggests that everything, every trial, every fire, every tough situation is being worked together for an ultimate good. It's all part of a much bigger, purposeful plan.
Here's a cool little tidbit. Even the language itself gives us a clue. The ancient Greek word for fire is pur. Sound familiar? It's the root of our English words purge and purify. The idea of cleansing was baked right into the word from the very beginning.
So we'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if our biggest struggles, our toughest trials, aren't a sign of God's anger at all, but are actually a sign of his refining love? It's a pretty big shift in perspective, right? Something to think about as you look at the fires in your own life.